皆さんこんにちは、紀藤昭夫です。私は気象庁や大学で長年にわたって気候変動の研究に携わってきました。現在は一般財団法人気象業務支援センターに所属して、気象庁の気象研究所の方々と一緒に地球温暖化による地域の気候変動予測の研究をしています。今日はこれからアメリカのラマナサン教授とリモートによる対談を行います。ラマナサン教授は現在カリフォルニア大学サンディエゴ校スクリプス海洋研究所の教授でいらっしゃいます。この度ラマナサン教授は第30回ブループラネット賞を受賞されました。この賞は1992年に朝日ガラス財団によって設立されたもので、人類が抱えている重要な課題である地球環境問題の解決に向けて著しい貢献を果たした個人あるいは組織に対して贈られる国際賞です。この部屋にはこれまで受賞された著名な方々のお写真が飾られています。ラマナサン教授の受賞理由ですが、二酸化炭素だけでなくフロン類やメタン、ブラックカーボンといった単寿命の気候汚染物質が地球温暖化に大きな影響を及ぼしていることを見出され、これらの削減がですね、二酸化炭素排出量の削減とともに温暖化の緩和に極めて重要でして、そもそもこれらの物質が大気汚染の元となる物質ですので、大気汚染の改善にも有効であるということを明らかにされたことにあります。本来は教授に来日していただき受賞記念講演をしていただく予定でしたが、昨年に続き新型コロナ禍のパンデミックにより今年もリモートで先生のお話を聞く形となりました。それでは早速サンディエゴにいらっしゃるラマナサン教授に呼びかけましょう。では最初に質問から始めさせていただきます。現在の地球温暖化問題に対して二酸化炭素排出の影響がですね大きいということは皆さんよく知られているわけですけれども、単寿命の気候汚染物質 SLCP も気候に大きな影響を与えます。で、先生はブラックカーボンなどの単寿命気候汚染物質を調査されてきました。その単寿命気候汚染物質とその気候への影響についてお聞かせ願えますか。
You know, when we talk about global warming, immediately the only thing people think about that it's carbon dioxide from fossil fuel combustion. In fact, until 1975, all the scientists thought the same. They thought carbon dioxide from fossil fuel combustion was the only thing we need to worry about. And it was in 1975, I was just fresh out of graduate school. I stumbled on this discovery that there are other gases which are heating the planet. The one which I identified in 1975 is chlorofluorocarbons. They are called CFC11 and CFC12. The trade name was Freon 11 and Freon 12. Scientists were interested in the CFCs at that time, mainly chemistry. Chlorofluorocarbons are released from spray cans, like I show in this figure. They are also released from refrigerants. And they were attacking the ozone chemistry. But CFCs have another entirely different effect from the physics of them. Like CO2, they trap the heat, infrared heat from the planet. What I found was that a ton of these CFCs 11 and 12 in the air has the same effect as 10,000 tons of carbon dioxide. This came as a bombshell to the community. Many scientists had a hard time believing that. And it took a few years for them to confirm my findings. So suddenly a new avenue was opened. So there is the CO2 trapping the planet's heat and warming the planet. Then now there are other gases. So what I had discovered was CFCs, and right now our understanding is that these other gases are heating the planet almost as much as carbon dioxide. So I want to show you our current understanding of carbon dioxide and the other gases. So let me switch to this second PowerPoint I sent you, and they're called short-lived climate pollutants. So there is a pie chart I show where I show the carbon dioxide how much it's trapping. Then I show these non-carbon dioxide gases. That is methane, CFCs, hydrofluorocarbons, nitrous oxide, which is called N2O, and then the third is ozone, and then black carbon. Okay? The size of the sphere shows how much heat it's trapping. Okay, this is as of 2010. And I want to give just one small background to the general public. How do these gases heat the planet? Okay? Take carbon dioxide. Once you release them, about 50% stays for 100 years, and about 20% stays for 1,000 years. So we call them long-lived greenhouse gases. They stay forever, and they accumulate, they accumulate. And how do they heat the planet? It's exactly like how a blanket on a cold winter night keeps you warm. So when you put the blanket over you, it traps your body heat. It doesn't allow the heat from the body escape. Same way, these gases cover the entire planet like a blanket and slows down the rate at which the heat is escaping, so the planet heats up. So there was the CO2 blanket everybody was worried about. Now after my work, we are now worried about the non-CO2 blanket. Okay? Of these gases, some of them are short-lived compared to carbon dioxide, which stays for 100 to 1,000 years. Well, let's take this. HFCs, hydrofluorocarbons, they replaced CFCs because CFCs were banned by the Montreal Protocol. HFCs, their average lifetime is 10 years. Methane, its average lifetime is about 10 years. Okay? And ozone is about a few months. And black carbon is not a gas, but it's a particle. Black carbon doesn't trap the planet's heat, it traps the sun's heat and heats. It's the strongest absorber of sunlight. Okay? Black carbon lifetime is only 2 weeks. So those who stay in the atmosphere less than 10 years, we call them short-lived climate pollutants. Okay? I separated them in a paper in 2010 to show my scientists, other scientists, this is a way to solve the climate change problem. Okay? So let me tell you about what it means. So take soot, black carbon. It heats the planet by trapping sun's heat. Its lifetime is only 1 week to 10 days. What that means, if the entire planet gets rid of the black carbon emissions, it's relatively easy. I'll talk to you later. That black carbon heating is gone in 10 days. So we have an opportunity to cut down the warming a little bit quickly while the carbon dioxide is taking control. I want to introduce one other concept. This graph is called super pollutants compared to CO2. So if you put the it's called super pollutants compared to CO2. It has the CO2 effect as 1. Methane is about 25 to 100 times more potent than CO2. Black carbon is about 500 to 2,000 times more potent, depending on the source. The black carbon from diesel vehicles is super potent. Okay? Then comes HFCs, hydrofluorocarbons, used as refrigerants. They're about 2,000 times more potent per ton. So what that means is that when you bring down these emissions, not only will the heating come down fast, but the energy trapped will also come down fast. So we showed this in the graph you have, where we see the warming. If you continue business as usual, yeah, that's the graph you are having there. The black line shows if we don't do anything about it, the society is unfortunately not doing much about climate change. So the warming will reach 4 degrees by 2100, very quick. By 2050, that warming will shoot past 2 degrees, which would be considered catastrophic change. You know, we could melt away the entire Arctic, starts numerous tipping points. So in the business as usual, we will go past 2 degrees by 2040, just 20 years from now, 25 years. Then I show what happens if we bring down CO2, the way we are talking about it, right? We start bending the CO2 emissions curve, make it carbon neutral by 2050. And you see from that curve doesn't bend for another 30 years. It's still rising because of its long memory. Okay? So you can ask, how can we trust that? Because we are cutting down the emissions. But you see, what we are forgetting, because of its long lifetime, we have already added 1 trillion tons. 1 trillion ton is 1,000 billion tons of carbon dioxide. That blanket is there. Just because you cut down the emissions today, that blanket is still there. It's going to be there for 100 years. So it's heating. Okay? So then I show another curve. It's called SLCPs. Again, we start bending the SLCPs by now, 2021. You see how that warming curve bends immediately. Within 5 to 10 years, we can bring the warming down. So, but I want to point out, cutting the SLCPs, just if we say, let's cut the SLCPs, forget about CO2, it'll be a catastrophe. That's why the SLC. So we need to cut both to level the warming to below 2 degrees. So the problem with the current approach, where we focus just on CO2, while I strongly support that, it's not going to prevent a catastrophe striking us. In the next 10 years, we'll cross 1.5. In the next 25, we'll cross 2 degrees. The only way we can keep the warming below 2, at least for the next 30 years, is cut CO2, bring it to 0, and short-lived climate pollutants.
二酸化炭素の削減と同時に短寿命気候汚染物質の削減が重要であるとおっしゃいました。この両方を効果的に削減するにはどうしたらよいとお考えでしょうか。
Thank you. Yeah. You see, we should first target fossil fuels. That is the biggest villain for climate change. Fossil fuels emit carbon dioxide. They also give off methane. We use natural gas, that's methane, and that escapes from the gas pipes. So what 10–15% of the methane is from fossil fuel leakage, and then fossil fuels burning diesel puts black carbon, okay? And it causes air pollution. See, so far we've been talking about the climate change problem in a wrong way. We just say fossil fuels, carbon dioxide. No, we say that we should focus on people's health. First, our health, then the health of the planet. Okay? Fossil fuel causes air pollution, kills about 6 million people every year.
6 million.
6 million. Heart disease, lung disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary COPD, okay, and also impacts cognitive functions. So if we can say we want to target fossil fuels to clean out air pollution, then it gets rid of the climate problem, CO2 problem is gone, air pollution is gone, okay? So that is what I'm pushing last 4 or 5 years. Focus on health. Because if you look at why did Japan cut air pollution? Why did China now trying to cut, why did Americans cut air pollution? Not to protect the planet, not to protect glaciers, but to protect our lungs. So what we did was we let the fossil fuel burn, but just put filters. See, that's a temporary fix. It's for a person who is smoking, has lung cancer. You tell him, you keep smoking, I will put chemotherapy to fix your lung cancer. That's what we did. So we say no, we solve the underlying problem, okay? So when you switch from fossil fuel to renewables, air pollution is gone overnight. And then you need targeted measures. See, cutting fossil fuels to zero would also cut some air pollutant. The soot from diesel is gone. Sulfates, nitrates are gone, and CO2 is gone, okay? Then you need targeted measures. For example, the poorest 3 billion people in the planet. Okay, there are 40% of the planet are so poor, they can't access fossil fuels. They are burning firewood and dung and coal. Even China is now considered a super country. A third of them are burning coal, inhaling the smoke. So we give them clean energy access, okay? Use microgrids and put local solar just on the rooftop. We have done this. So that will get, so they will have better cooking methods, electric stoves, whatever, right? So that way black carbon, once you get rid of fossil fuels and giving the poorest 3 billion financing, okay, black carbon is gone. So you can ask, why should I sit in San Diego, give money to some poor people in Africa and India? I'll tell you why. 50% of the CO2, climate pollutants, are caused by the richest 1 billion people. I am part of it. And you look at the poorest 3 billion, I have estimated this myself, their contribution to climate change is less than 5%. But they are suffering the worst consequences. So we start a climate resilience plan. You see the so-called cost of carbon on the world's climate. It's called social cost of carbon. It's about $50 a ton. We have put 1 trillion tons. That's $50 trillion damage. And we just take 5% and give it to the poor for their energy. Okay? Methane, let's take methane. About 10% would be gone if you cut fossil fuels. But the other part of the methane comes from when you throw food and organic waste into the landfill. It becomes methane, leaks methane. So ban putting organic waste into garbage. Convert that into biodigesters, to fertilizers, and convert that to methane, renewable methane, okay? And the same third biggest source is rice paddies. See, anytime you have water, there's no oxygen going in, the organisms produce methane. So better farming practices, it's all available, okay? Take HFCs. Fortunately, today President Biden and his team announced they're going to phase out HFCs. We have refrigerators which run on others, totally, climate neutral refrigerators, they're already there. So these solutions are there off the shelf, we can pick it. But somehow when we talk about climate change, we only talk about CO2. To me, it's, as a scientist working on this for 50 years, I feel sad and frustrated. We are destroying the future of our children and grandchildren, not trying to look at it broad way. We have to cut CO2, but we have to cut these pollutants now.
ありがとうございます。ちょっと次のアイテムに移らせていただきますが、いろいろパブリックに対して、重要なことを伝えていくのが重要なことは言うわけでもありませんが、その他に先生はフランシスコ法など世界の影響力のある人たちを巻き込んだ活動をされてきました。具体的な成果について教えていただけますでしょうか。また最も印象に残ったことは何でしょ
う。Yeah, you see, I am advancing the idea that scientists like you and me and the world community of scientists should form an alliance with policymakers and faith leaders. Okay? So you can ask, why are you bringing religion? Where do they fit in? So I have to ask a question. There is overwhelming science showing climate change has become a crisis, okay? And it is now affecting millions, if not billions, to heat waves, floods, storms, fires. Why are we not taking actions? And I have predicted with two other scientists 3 years ago that the 1.5 degree warming, which is considered a dangerous threshold, is going to happen 9 years from now, 2030. At the time we published it, IPCC was still saying 1.5 degree warming is after 2040. So we sent them all our data. Fortunately, in the report they released 2 months ago, they're also saying the 1.5 degree warming will happen early 2030s. So it's just there around the corner. In California, we have lost 40% of our forests, 40%. The entire New York, New Jersey was flooded. But still our climate plan, I admire what President Biden has done, but we are talking about bringing the emissions to zero by 2050. That's 30 years from now. To me, it's too late. So why is that? Because there is no public support. If you don't believe me, go to the shop next door or take an Uber ask your Uber driver about climate change. He may know about it, but very few think it's an urgent problem. So how do you get that public support? In countries like America, where climate change has become a polarized issue, right? America is divided into two. One side says, oh, climate change is important. The other says, oh, climate change is not the big problem. So it became politicized. So how do we depoliticize it, separate it from all the issues which divide us or which concerns us? Faith, I'm claiming, is that neutral form. Because whether you are a conservative or whether you are a progressive, you all go to the same church or to the same temple or to the same mosque. Okay? So I have talked to personally with Pope Francis and then His Holiness the Dalai Lama and one of the biggest spiritual leaders in India. She is called Amma, for hugging mother. And then I have talked to the evangelicals, most conservative in America. And so far my experiences, they always tell me, oh, Dr. Ram, we didn't know that there is so much science. So I think it's not that I persuaded the Dalai Lama, Pope Francis, they were already serious about climate change. I just give them the scientific support. I think we need to figure out a way to reach out to the public directly. See, scientists like you and me, we thought all we have to do is publish our papers and write reports. Society will listen. No, we tried for 45 years. So we have to think differently. How can we be more effective? I'm thinking working with the faith leaders. And if, I now get invited to give talks in churches. I talk, go to the church and talk to them. Always the experience has been very pleasant. After all, I'm a Hindu, I'm not a Christian, and I'm not a white person. And my name is so long, nobody can even say my name. But I had never had a problem talking with conservative churchgoers. I talked in Nebraska, in Coal Town in Pennsylvania, many churches in California and Minnesota. Always same experience. They really are surprised. There is so much science because what they hear is, oh, climate change is junk science. We don't have to worry about it. We can change that.
ありがとうございます。最後になりますが、次の世代、若い世代へのメッセージをお願いできますでしょうか。
Thank you. In fact, you see, the brightest spot I see in climate change is how the youth are rising up, the youth movement, right? We know about Greta Thunberg, and there are many such youth movements around the world. So people listen to them. So the first message I have to tell them is, don't get discouraged. Make sure your voice is heard, because this is your future. And my generation will do to protect you, but you have to cry out, you have to shout out, you have to raise your voice. Okay? And the second is, you have to educate yourself. It's one thing just to see the papers and shout and strike, which is important, but you also have to learn what the issues are. See, I have started a major education program called Bending the Curve. And we have developed this for all undergraduates, whether you're a music major or you're an English major or you're an economics major or engineering. I am now trying to take it to the rest of America. I'm just getting started on that. Okay? So I think every society, we should educate our children about climate change, about protecting nature, about respecting nature and loving nature. So that has to start all the way from kindergarten. We cannot just go to college. It has to become part of our culture. Again, you know, religions can help that. So I am full of hope. I know we are going to solve this problem. But you children, you have to play a part. You cannot just sit expecting my generation will solve the problem. We need to do it together.
先生どうもありがとうございました。これで対談を終わりたいと思います。
Thank you, Dr. Kito.